Now, when I say the internet is enriched with services, it's a big computer, and this is one of the services it runs. This is a new generation of a browser. So I click on my name, Don Tapscott. Let's click on something else that Don Tapscott's associated with here. How about Wikinomics? That was my penultimate book. So all of a sudden, all this content in a multimedia form comes around the whole topic of Wikinomics. If we were to click on something else, let's pick, how about that one? Enterprise 2.0. That's a concept that I'm associated with. All of a sudden, this whole world of the Enterprise 2.0 starts to come together. So the internet is a computer, and it has these applications, like this one, that are running on it. Facebook, of course, is the most important social network on the web. But I just wanted to give you a feeling, because there's a lot going on in the environment on Facebook. Facebook has around 220 million users. That would make it more than twice as large as the number of people who have ever watched a Super Bowl game, twice as around the world on television, twice as big as YouTube, twice as big as Skype, bigger than the number of people who own gaming consoles, all video games, bigger than the population of all but 4 countries in the world. It just passed Brazil. Twice as big as eBay, 4 times as big as the number of people in the U.S. Who run on treadmills, and it's twice as big as the number of malnourished people in India. Another way to look at it is to imagine that if half of the people on Facebook were malnourished and living in one place. So this is an extraordinary thing. And who here is on Facebook? Could you put up your hands, please? Okay. Those of you who are not, assignment number 1 is to do that. Now, there's a lot of talk. This is a real-time Twitter feed on the topic of climate change that I captured a couple of nights ago. And I'm just sitting there in my hotel room and watching the world discussing climate change. The Twitter feed I've been watching most recently, of course, is the one on India. But with Twitter, every one of these is a person who's talking about something and referring to a resource. And there are tens of millions of people on Twitter, and it's the fastest growing phenomenon now on the internet. So that's point number 1. This is not the internet of the .com period. Number 2 is this technology revolution is intersecting with a demographic revolution. This is the world map, and I've distorted it to equal the land mass of all of the countries in the world. This is a program where you can plug in different data sets. So I plugged in a data set into every country called surface area. This is the world map according to total population, so you can see that the world is distorted quite a bit. This is the world, I'm going to show you in a second, but, oops, now. We have the biggest, it's okay. We have the biggest generation ever, and these kids are growing up digital. I started studying young people as a generation about 15 years ago when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. At first I thought they were prodigies, and then I noticed that all their friends were like them, so that was a bad theory. So I began working with a number of children. A dozen years ago I wrote a book called Growing Up Digital. Flash forward to today. Since I wrote that book, 1 billion people have come onto the web, and there are more young people that use the web in China than in the United States. And these kids are different because my generation grew up watching television. They were the passive recipients of TV, the baby boomers, 24 hours a week per kid. These kids are growing up interacting, and it's a generation of natural collaborators. And at their fingertips, they have the most powerful tool ever for finding out what's going on, informing others, and organizing collective responses. Now, if we distort the map again, by the way, looking at demographics, the world map according to carbon emissions, the world map according to those affected by storms, and the world map according to those killed by storms, and the world map according to those killed by drought. So we have a generation here that's the biggest ever. They're largely in Asia and Africa, but it's a huge generation in North America and South America. It's tiny in Western Europe, relatively speaking. And there are a couple of other countries in the world where the population is very old, not young. Japan being one of them, and they have a big problem because it's a restricted immigration policy as well. But biggest generation ever, they think differently, they're natural collaborators. You put those two together and you have what I would describe as a social revolution. Now I could show you 50 charts, and I won't, but they all look the same. They all show the old HTML, that was the old web, website in red, being eclipsed by the XML-based community in blue. The old one thought the internet was about websites. The new one understands the internet is about collaboration. The old one built a website, the new one built a vibrant community. The old one thought that content is king. The new one understands you create a context whereby people can collaborate. So Flickr beats Kodak EasyShare, and YouTube beats MTV. MTV provides content. YouTube says, no, we create a platform whereby people self-organize to create their own content. Facebook beats Match.com. Wikipedia beats, this is hardly fair. At the back of the room, there's a little red line running along the bottom there that you might not be able to see. There's a new blog created every second of the day, 24 hours of the day. A lot of them are garbage, and some of them are bigger than the mainstream media. So what's going on here? Well, something very important when we think about the environment. It's called self-organization. And a quick story. It was 2.5 years ago, and I gave my son Alex, who was 20 at the time, a junior in high school, I gave him an advance copy of this book I'd written called Wikinomics. And I gave it to him for Christmas. I gave him some other things for Christmas, too. But he said, thanks, Dad. He went off, he started reading the book. He came back a couple hours later, and he said, hey, Dad, this is a good book. It's like he's surprised or something. And he says, I think I'm going to create a community on Facebook. I said, can I watch? 15 minutes later, he's created the Wikinomics community. Another 15 minutes later, he's got 6 members. By the time we're eating turkey on Christmas night, he has 130 members in 7 countries. He's got a president, secretary, and a chief information officer and a board of directors. He has 7 regional coordinators. He sent out a PDF of the first 2 chapters of the book. Before I'm sitting down to Christmas dinner, I have kids writing in saying, Mr. Tapscott, we found errors in your book. And the community is placing demands on me. One kid writes in and he says, how exactly is Mr. Tapscott going to be contributing to our community? So it occurred to me, there's something going on here that you don't know what it is. Self-organization, 2 words, has been around throughout human history. Language was developed through self-organization. There was no central committee of the English language that said this will be called paper. It just kind of happened. Science was a function of self-organization, as was government. But what used to take place over millennia or centuries can now happen over years or months or on a single Christmas day. I never could have created a community in 7 countries with 130 people when I was 20 years old, regardless of what I did. Alex did it on a single Christmas day. Now, there are some people that understand this concept. One of them is the President of the United States. It was about 2 years ago, someone sent me an email saying, do you know that this senator named Barack Obama thinks that your book is the key to transforming America? So I went there onto mybarackobama.com, and sure enough, there was my book. My first reaction was to think, well, I'm definitely the man. And then I started to notice that there were other communities there too, not just a Wikinomics community. There was a firefighters community for Obama, and a single moms who support daycare for Obama, and a Xbox users who are against global warming community for Obama. 35,000 communities self-organized on this platform. And they created a social network that brought him to power.